I want to thank everybody for joining us this morning. Good morning, Debo. Good morning, Jermaine. Good morning, Troublemaker.
Right. Somebody knows somebody in here.
Oh man, you sit up here messing with the church.
The church.
Sit there messing with, and then
See, she was gonna leave,
I was
Keith.
getting
Now
ready
you
to leave.
asked for this, man. You
I was
asked
getting ready.
for
Is
this
my
one.
mic on? Please
It
make
is.
sure my
It
mic
is.
is on.
It is.
it is over.
You said messing with the church. I posed questions.
I think it was Pastor Shaw, Richard Shaw, who came on, and part of the.
Whose name? His wife's name is Michelle. I always like saying.
Is that right?
Yep, her name is Michelle. I think her name is Michelle Bryant.
Is that right?
Yep.
And they're from Alabama.
Yes, all that.
Yeah.
All that.
But they're at St. Matthew CME Church, and he said, we're pretty good at the mercy ministry. When
Tell people what is it?
Mercy ministry would be when the sister called in and talked about the work that they do over at Holy Cathedral.
Right.
But it's the justice ministry. And I heard your clip that you played from Jeremiah Wright. I don't take the condescension that Jeremiah Wright does towards not formally educated Black preachers.
Do you think it's condescension though?
I thought it was condescension because he was seminary trained, and so then idea that you should be seminary trained. Not to say I do really believe in
But Keith, I think the thing and the point that he, at least the way I take it, the point that he makes is, it's one thing when you talk about the subtext, the foundational work, all the different things that play into your study of religion. Because you think about the courses you took, whether it's philosophy or, I don't know what the curriculum was, but all of those things help you form how you interpret and read that Bible.
Hermeneutics. That's what you heard.
What's it called?
Term, hermeneutics.
Yeah, he said that because I had to go look it up. And, so when you got people who have not bothered to learn any of that then like I heard somebody just do something just recently. They talked about a certain passage or a certain thing in the Bible, and I'm sitting there going, that's not what that means. I know based on my education that that's not what that means. And later I talked to the pastor about it. He was offended. I'm sorry, bro, because what you're saying is wrong. You don't understand the backstory on this issue. I think that there is something to be said for formalized training. I'm not saying everybody got to have it, but I'm saying that there is something to be said from you getting up and preaching the word just from your own understanding, because that's frequently what will happen. You have people, I've been called, I was running from the Lord, I finally answered. They've not done any formal anything, but read the Bible, relied on what they've heard from other people. They begin leading flocks, but they have not bothered to do sometimes the work that's required to be able to fully understand that book. I just think that, like he said, lawyers go to law school, doctors go to medical school. Religion is the biggest area of influence in our world. And so sometimes you got people standing in front of you who've not done the work.
I think because when Paul was at Mars Hill, he talked about they had put up all these. Mars Hill was a place where you could go, and it was basically any religion in the world had a place. And Paul pointed out that you even have a spot here for the unknown, unnamed God, because Jewish people were not allowed to say God. But then he said, but you're superstitious people. And superstition is really a strongly held belief that people have. The Black church, because education denied, we depended more on superstition than we did on fact and knowledge. And then a critique of what is being taught.
Hang on, go back for a second. you said that the black church, or I guess early in its inception, depended more on superstition,
Holy Spirit.
rather than fact.
Yeah, because
But where do they get that from?
you get it from, if you and they're showing it now, it's in rotation, The Birth of a Nation, where Nat Turner was an itinerant plantation preacher.
Right.
But when he went to the plantations to preach, there was always a white man standing there making sure that he didn't do anything that would rile up the enslaved individuals. So he's not going to get up and preach about Moses and the children of Israel who were in Hebrew people who were in Egypt, and then their ultimate liberation from bondage, because that would say that then we should push off, the oppression of the oppressor. That's a tough one.
So where does the superstition come from?
The superstition is just a strongly held belief. It's more about belief. You heard the arguments I have with people when let's talk about evolutionary science. People push back because the propaganda for and it's not just black folks. Let me say this, because they're poor whites, right, who subscribe to the same type of religion. If you watch Jimmy Swaggart, theologically, other than this whole idolatry of the cross, I'm not even gonna get into that piece. There is a similarity in their theology. One, we put this premium on being saved, and we put a premium on gifts of the Spirit, right? Because Pentecostalism in America, or Pentecostalism really in the world, it's over 100 years old. This is not anything that happened other than the Azusa Street revival that they had, I think 1907, by a black man, who out of that came the Church of God in Christ. Out of that came the Church of God. Out of that came the Assemblies of God. So I think that there's a theology there. For example, the Bible, the unerred word of God, that's a 100-year-old concept. Now, I went to Catholic schools. So in Catholic schools, when you read the scriptures and you study the scripture, it's very different than if I found myself, I was at American Baptist College in Nashville, which prepares a lot of black clergy. And real quick, let me parenthetically insert here. At American Baptist College, you have John Lewis, you have Bernard Lafayette, you have James Bevel's, you have C.T. Vivian. Now, they came out of the prophetic part of the school. But when I was there, it was more about the preaching, right? The ability, the gift.
And what's the difference?
The difference is that the prophetic says that we have to speak truth to power. And we use the scriptures to justify to this whole sense of what justice is and what justice looks like. And in the case of these four individuals, it was the civil rights movement, right? Which was a justice movement. So I think for a lot of folks, but again, it's an education piece. I remember I only did 1 year there, and I came home and we had a program at the church. And man, my little education, I'd only been there 1 year, right? And people go, yeah, all these cemetery trained preachers.
Cemetery.
Right, because look, folks, I hate to put it this way.
Cemetery.
Yeah, that.
Funeral services.
Clever. So I think for me, I look at it from a different lens. And I was explaining, I'm always going to look at it first from a political lens, right? I look at it in terms of context. The hermeneutics that I'm looking at is politically what was going on at that time, right? And then we can then clearly understand maybe the context of which this particular writing was given.
So I just want to make this comment because I think in a lot of ways you are proving Jeremiah Wright's point.
Talk on it.
Because that's like one of the reasons why people enjoy listening to Representative Myers talk, because you're not going to just get the surface. Then there is the etymology, there's the root, there's this point in history. Understand that this A influenced B, B influenced C. So by the time you over here talking about D, you need to understand that all these other factors fell into place, rolled in, and impacted that. And so I think that while it may have come off like, he was being condescending, that there is some value inherently. I've had so many people tell me how much they enjoy when you discuss the Bible. To my personal chagrin, I've had so many people tell me I appreciate those conversations because I'm learning things that I did not know that impacts the message
And let me say this.
and comprehension.
And here's the problem that some people would have with going to divinity school. We can go to Bible college, and Bible college is this whole, you learn the Bible. It was something that I heard. There is also Bible idolatry. And it was, I don't know, it was a few years back, Meech called in. Preach. Do you believe in the Bible? And I said, I do not. I believe the Bible, but I don't believe in the Bible. People say, well, that word, yeah, it makes a big difference because the Bible. And when you go to divinity school, when you go to seminary, you're going to find out that the Bible, though it becomes that kind of cardinal point, everything is hinged on that. There's so many other things that feed in, because when you look at Christian theology, and here's my conflict, I'm trying to reconcile a European religion with my Bantu experience. I'll say it again. I'm trying to reconcile a European religion with my Bantu experience.
Which always goes back to in a much simpler, more layman's terms, what did we believe before slavery?
Before enslavement. And
how do those things work together?
And it was problematic for enslavers to even try to convert Africans to Christianity, because that would mean that they would be equal. And because of, and I know you got the text yesterday, and I just only do it because because of white supremacy, right? That if you weren't white, you were less than. That now we got to treat them equally. I don't know about all of that. Plus, there have been people who've used scriptures to justify their revolution. So do we really, really, really want that? And then I think the other piece of it is, and it's kind of at the end of your conversation that you were having with Dr. Motri and Sister Conyers, this idea, we push back on education. We really do. And I think that's what becomes very challenging, because if I pick up a book, or if I go, I might find out the things that I was taught maybe wasn't great.
Right.
But that's okay, because religion is fluid. Is not
but
stagnant.
The other thing, though, that I didn't play in that clip that was talked about by, I think his name was Noel Jones. I don't know if Noel Jones said it or if Wright said it, but they said also that while some people push back on education, but everybody want them titles. So you got Reverend Dr. So-and-so and so. But like he said, Dr. King was a PhD graduate that had a real PhD. But you got all these, and I talk about this all the time. Like, I'm like looking at some of these pastors here in Milwaukee, and I know you ain't did no work to be called doctor.
Well, you could have.
Yes and no.
It's a whole lot.
In some cases you didn't. And in other cases, what you did does not rise to the level of academic rigor that would qualify for a PhD. You ain't defended no dissertation. Whatever biblical route that they gave you to come up with some of these bootleg titles, that's what they've done. That's why I also get so impassioned about folks with an honorary degree trying to walk outside of the granting university and claim that title, because the truth has to be told. You did not do the academic work to be called a doctor. And it is a disrespect to the people who've done the damn work, who have put in the man hours. The academic study has defended dissertations, have paid tens and thousands of dollars to get this degree. And that's why I get so heated. And because, people think you're being mean, I'm trying to educate and help you. I'm not being mean. I'm trying to help you, because the majority of people are laughing at you. And it's a bunch of preachers. A lot of people are laughing at you because they know that that your title doctor is fake.
Yeah, and I think it was something that I think she's your soror, right? Dr. Trinette McCrae.
Yeah.
And I was going back and forth, because at one point, and maybe I will revisit it, I was looking at possibly enrolling in Garrett Theological Divinity School down at Northwestern. And she said, Keith, you need to understand, your education is really for you. And what she was saying was to give me more insight into the things that I am preaching about. Because trust me, if I get up and start talking about Nietzsche, and that was Dr. King's problem. Now he could do that at Ebenezer, and even at Ebenezer, because somebody came up to Dr. King and said he just go on. He just start quoting Nietzsche, right? And they said they don't know what you're talking about when you start talking about Nietzsche, and they wouldn't. So my job is how do I take Nietzsche and the point that Nietzsche is making, and then do it in a level that people can then understand the theological takeaway, as I like to call it. Where is it? There are 4 parts of a message. There's the logos, that is the scripture that you use, that's the word. There is the ethos. There's that moral, ethical thing that you derive from it. I should have started at the beginning. There's the theos. Where's the God in all of this? And here's something that we really focus on. There's the pathos. There's the passion. There's a power in that preaching. And sometimes we more, and look, I'm guilty of this too. I get more into the pathos and I lose the theos, and I lose, the ethos, and I won't lose the logo because I'm using that. Because look, it's performative. I was saying that how difficult it was when we were doing telephone church, because I'm a black preacher.
You feed off.
Oh man, call and response.
Right.
I mean, and look, there are very few exceptions to that rule. And then something you said, I remember hearing this at American Baptist. They said that it's like every football player wants to be a basketball player, and every basketball player want to be a football player, right? So everybody wants to be the hoopers want to be a great doctor, right? And great doctors want to be hoopers. So then you get a Charles Adams, who I think passed last year. He was known as the Harvard Hooper. If you don't know who Charles Adams is, go back to Aretha Franklin's funeral. And there's a man who gets up and starts all doing thank you in all those different languages, right? He was Harvard trained. All he wanted to do was to go to Harvard. I'll give you that. Demetrius Williams is also Harvard
Community
trained.
Baptist.
Community Baptist Church.
I think he was there at the same time Barack Obama was there too.
Right. So that, and there is that, for some people, a dynamic tension. For me, it really is about how do we get to truth? And then what is the transformational power of truth? Truth is uncomfortable sometimes. Truth hits us in places that, because there's a certain status quo living that we have. We just put it on automatic. And it should be challenging. And I think that you asked the question because right now the black church is challenged. Now, somebody said know the difference between the black church and churches that black people go to. And the point he was making was that whole historical thing. You heard Jeremiah Wright talk about that even before we got here, and let me do my shameless plug, before the Mayflower, again, I am doing every day, I'm bringing in books that I would suggest that black people read. But we talk about, we had religion before we came to America.
Right.
And if you look at maybe how we practice our religion and how Europeans practice theirs, it's probably a very, 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 very big difference, right? We had people who came on those slave ships who were Muslims, and so it is this thing of thinking about how we do it to the way where we liberate, elevate our people. That becomes the challenge. That is very difficult. And if you don't move in spaces where we're talking about justice in such a way, it is foreign to you, it's difficult for you. It comes down. One last quick thing. We're up on the 30th year anniversary in October of the Million Man March. There were many, many, many. The major black denominations, Christian denominations, denounced the march, the leadership, and said they wouldn't go. But here's the problem. Their people went. And I said this, that the Creator can use whoever she wants to bring about justice. And even though there was a man outside of my religious tradition, justice is bigger than our denominations. The fight for justice is bigger than our denominations. And so we need to be mindful of that. It's a whole lot. Last quick thing. I'm babbling. I was at a workshop we had, part of the whole continuing education piece we do at the National Baptist Convention locally. We had it here. And Demetrius Williams was the lecturer. Oh my God. He was on point.
Yeah, it's a bad boy.
And then he looked out at his audience and he said, I know y'all tired of hearing all this black stuff, right? So for a lot of us, religion should be edifying, which means to build up. Religion should be liberating, which it should be free. But we have to unlearn all those things that, not all, but many of those things that we've been taught in terms of even how we talk about God. But thank you for the call. I think I will do this month. What was it? Faith, justice, politics. And we'll have that conversation because I think you're right. The Black church has an enormous role in our struggle for freedom. Good job, Michelle.
Thank you, bro. And thank you for everything that you bring to the discussion. Y'all have a good show.
Oh, you're going to be sore in the morning. You're listening to Community Voice. Those are muscles you never use. You're listening to Community Voice. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
The passing of a loved one is emotional enough without adding the stress of funeral arrangements. By pre-planning, you receive the desires of your heart while taking away the burden from your family. It also saves you money, providing the dignity and respect your memory deserves. And there are times
You're inside Community Voice on WNOV 860 AM and 106.5 FM with your host, Keith Parris.
All right, welcome back to Community Voice. And again, it's Black History Month, and every day I will be bringing in different books of suggested reading. Again, Before the Mayflower, Lerone Bennett Jr. I was just telling Julia that I read this book when I was 12 years old. It was suggested that I read this book by now Dr. Evelyn Hickman Bottom, who is a professor on Black religion at Harvard University. She was my seventh grade teacher.
Oh, wow.
And she suggested. And here's a new book that was just released last year by Michael Harriot, Black AF History. And you can put in what AF means, The Unwashed Story of America. And I love Michael Harriot. I think he's with The Root. But two great books that read. So read one book. Read one book. I started reading Souls of Black Folks by W.E.B. Du Bois. Ooh, that's hard reading. Man. But yeah, this is, and I hated it because it was so just stereotypical when people say if you want to hide something from Black people, put it in a book. Yeah, but pick up a book. It is this thing. I was telling someone that my mom's love language with me is books. My mother would always give me books, always give me, and I don't know if she did for the other two sibs, but I know for me, it was if she went to the National Baptist Convention, she'd bring me back books. She'd go to Congress, she'd bring me back books. She traveled someplace. She said, I think you might enjoy this book. And so that love for reading, that thirst for knowledge really came from my mom. I wish I was a better counter, do math better, but when it comes to reading, ooh. But so we're going to read, and there's just a plethora of books out there that we're going to read. And I do want to have a discussion with Black church leaders. I started doing this little series. We did a couple of them called Faith, Justice, Politics, where we talk about the intersection of faith being religion, justice, and politics. And there's a difference. You have at churches where people say we everything we do is political. I can be political at a church and not partisan. Mm-hmm. The Johnson Act says that you are not allowed, the Johnson Act done in 1954 when Lyndon Johnson was still in the U.S. Senate, this whole thing about tax exempt status and saying that churches could not, religious organizations, could not be involved in partisan politics. The difference with that being, I support the Democratic Party. I support the Green Party. That's different. But politics, because it's through politics that then we have societal change, right? Either through voting, either through acts of protest, to petition the government. That's all politics. And so we should know the differentiation between when I get up and I support. So you hear people say, I don't support it. You shouldn't. I say you shouldn't, not just because of the Johnson Act, just for practical reasons. But your congregation you have a responsibility to provide as much information to your congregation as possible, knowing who's running for a political office, what that political office does. There's nothing wrong with that, because guess what? Church is still part of the political body. It really is. If you look at nothing more than their tax exempt status, that was a political social policy. And the rationale behind the tax exempt policy for nonprofits was that they do community good. And because of that, they should not be taxed because they're doing a community good. Now, we go back and forth about the community good that people do. And I was kidding Michelle off air. I ran up against oh boy. No, Robert F. Kennedy was just confirmed. Yeah. Yeah, he was just confirmed. Yeah. So
we probably won't be doing flu shots next year.
Yeah. How about that? So anyway, With that said, we're inside Be Healthy, Be You.
So I have to just add, Keith, so when your pastor tells you you're going to HE double hockey sticks if you vote Democratic, that's inappropriate for the pulpit.
Yeah, and I would definitely be a former member of that church.
Yes, well,
I'm out of there, New York Minute, man.
yeah.
I tell people I watch religious porn, and I was watching Jimmy Swaggart, and I watched that family just get up and start talking about if those people, those Democrats, you voting Democrats, you just unleashed demons from hell. I was like, yeah, really?
So who was that sister? I forgot her name. White lady that prayed. She said she was praying for answers from the ancestors so they could vote for Trump or something like that. What was her name? The white lady. Paula White.
Yeah, I was gonna say skinny. Yeah,
Paula
I think
White.
that's who it was.
Yeah,
Don't get me started on Paula White.
Unbelievable.
Oh, you don't hear about her.
I know. I was just
Yeah,
gonna say,
well, yeah, that's
hadn't heard
part
about
of
her
the
in
reason why.
years.
Yeah, her
you
and her
know.
husband ended up closing their church in
Yeah.
Tampa because
Oh,
they had
wow.
some issues, some
Oh.
scandals. And then I can't think of the dude's name that she took over his church in Orlando. He died of a drug overdose in New York.
Was that cat? He was out preaching and he died in the hotel.
Yep.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I got to
He
pull him
just
up.
preached and went back to his hotel.
And did not know. And that's the whole thing about the clergy. They're human beings, man.
They
I
are.
mean, they struggle, and I guess he had struggled with heroin addiction. And
And he could preach too.
oh yeah, he was. And so you go to that church, and she takes over that church when he died. There are black people who will follow white preachers. Thank you, Zachary Timms.
Zachary, yeah.
Zachary.
Yeah, Zachary, yeah.
But again, somebody said that there's a difference between the black church and churches that black people attend. And it's talking about the whole cultural string that we have. So this is we've been a month. We ain't even a year good. And I'm ready for it. It's interesting. We talk about heart health today because
I'm pretty sure people is having a lot of heart issues about right now.
yeah, and
Stress, everything. Yeah.
and if you say that you ain't political, you impacted by what politically is happening.
Mhm.
And when people heard about that spending freeze, and people were like, "What does that mean?" So, Barack Obama said elections have consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's not right on that. Today we're talking about heart health, and so I wanted to talk about. I just thought it was appropriate because it's Black History Month. Excuse me. Okay. Pull this up. Daniel Hale Williams. Anybody know who Daniel Hale Williams is?
No. But Keith does.
You have to look it up. All right. Daniel Hale Williams, born January 18th, 1856, and he died August 4th, 1931, was an American surgeon and hospital founder. A Black American, he founded Provident Hospital in 1891, which was the first non-segregated hospital in America.
Mm.
Provident also had an associated nursing school for African American. He is known for being the first to perform a successful heart surgery. Well, that's not quite true.
Mhm.
But, so let's just talk about his personal life. Oh, there we go. In 1890, several attempts were made to improve cardiac surgery. On September 6, 1891, the first successful, and this is why I want to do it with you guys here, pericardial sac repair.
Mhm.
What is the pericardial part
It's
of the heart?
It's a sac around the heart.
Okay. Operation in the United States of America was performed by Henry C. Dalton of St. Louis, Missouri. The first successful surgery on the heart itself was performed by Norwegian surgeon Axel Kapelin on September the 4th at a hospital I cannot pronounce in a city that I cannot pronounce. Oh, Oslo, Norway. The first successful surgery of the heart performed without any complications was by Ludwig Wren of Frankfurt, Germany, who repaired a stab wound to the right ventricle on September the 7th, 1896. Despite these improvements, heart-related surgery was not widely accepted in the field of medical science until during World War II. Surgeons were forced to improve their methods of surgery in order to repair severe war wounds. Although they did not receive early recognition for their pioneering work, Dalton and Williams were later recognized for their roles in cardiac surgery. And so he went on to, and a real interesting background because he comes from, I think his grandmother was Scott Irish, his dad was black, and he lived in Wisconsin.
Oh.
Down in the Beloit area.
Okay.
It was down in the Beloit area where his father was a barber. He moved with his mom in Chicago. Then they moved to Edgerton, Wisconsin, and then they were in Beloit. He opened up a barber shop there. He saw a doctor there. He was fascinated by it. He did basically like an internship with the doctor, and then later was accepted into what is now the Northwestern University Hospital down in Chicago.
What city did he do this
Chicago.
hospital?
In Chicago.
In Chicago.
Mhm.
Okay.
So and it was a patron, a black woman who was patron who paid for his medical education.
And it doesn't surprise me that he was a barber, because a lot of barbers did a lot of medical.
They'll tell you
treatments
there's
and
something
stuff.
with the snake on the pole.
Mhm.
It has something to do that they were medicine. Saturday Night Live did a skit with Steve Martin where they would send him to the barber, and his whole approach to medicine was the leaches.
Mm.
You know, let's all those things.
Put
Yeah.
it on them.
Put them on him. So, but I think Daniel Hale Williams,
Mm.
who was one of the first in the world. There are only 3 had done it, prior to him, in terms of actually operating on the heart. And so, in Black history, we need to understand. If we talk about blood this month, we will talk about Charles Drew.
Mm-hmm.
And what he was able to do. So the fascinating thing in America is just because you try to erase the history doesn't mean the history didn't happen. And we should take great pride in what we did. Now, you would think that America would just be everybody who contributes, but unfortunately, it's up to us. It's up to for indigenous people. It's up to our Chicano brothers and sisters, our Latino brothers and sisters, to make sure, one, we know our history, right? And that the world knows our history.
Correct.
And that responsibility falls on us.
Correct. Because medical and healthcare, we were always segregated and treated poorly. We did come up with our own, especially our own birth workers and our own nurse and physicians that helped the community. And that's why I think of Dr. Carter. He was a person in our community that did a lot of good for our community. Didn't he teach the young men how to cleanse their system so they couldn't test positive for drugs?
Everybody said, go over to Carter's. You got to pee in the cup. Go over to Carter's. He got something for you.
He would show you. He would show you.
Yeah,
He said, there's no reason you guys shouldn't be getting jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Come on over here. Yeah. And he had a special treatment for ringworm. And he helped the barbers with that. He took what was affecting our community and with his knowledge, because he said when he went to pharmacy school, they dealt with herbs and and other things, other treatment besides just pharmaceutical. So he knew a lot of things to give you that would cleanse your body, get rid of ringworms, and help you. And it was just so amazing that he would come out and talk to anybody that would listen to him. He still wore his 1970 suit, the polyester plaid suit.
You got one, Devo?
Don't talk about Dr.
Of
Cotton.
course,
That full Cleveland leisure suit,
Don't talk about Dr.
white
Cotton.
belt, white shoes. That's the full Cleveland.
Them little
Robert
glasses,
Halls.
them little glasses hanging off his nose.
Yes,
He's looking over the top of the glasses.
I
Yeah.
love the way that drugstore smelled though.
Yeah.
he was
Oh,
back there
man.
cooking up something. He was back there with the dog back there with him. I was like, really?
Oh yeah.
Was
I
his
worked at
button?
our Avenue Playground, and so sometimes I would go over into the drugstore, and but druggists are chemists, and
Yes.
Mhm.
they will make the argument now. Part of what we deal with is big pharma,
Mhm.
and big pharma is, they're saying, look, we probably could find cures to most cancers, but the money is not in the cure. The money is in the treatment.
Mhm.
And so, so then you'd have local folks like that who was able to use like herbals and other things then to benefit us. I was looking at he's a graduate of Creighton University, and that's one of the schools I was looking at one point, Creighton. I'm glad I didn't go, but Creighton there in Omaha, Nebraska. Here's the other piece. Now, here's where I am kind of similarly connected.
To Carter.
No, to Creighton in Omaha, Nebraska.
Oh, okay.
Father Flanagan, who started Boys Town
Mm-hmm.
there in Omaha, is a graduate of Mount St. Mary's Seminary in Emmitsburg, Maryland. Yeah, where I went to school. I didn't go to seminary because I wanted to become a priest. But that connection. So when I watch the movie Boys Town and I see Spencer Tracy and Mickey Rooney, I go, yeah, he came out of the Mount. He came out of the Mount Seminary. So I wanted to talk about that little piece in terms of heart care. This is February's Heart Month, and be able to talk about the heart, the function of the heart.
I always say this because heart is very complex, but I say heart is the plumber part. That's the vessels and like your plumbing. And then there's an electrical part that regulates the beat, because you can have irregular heart rate. And that's the electrical part. So electrical part is dealt with electric with that EPhys, we call it
Electrophysiology.
electric physiology. It's electric is in there, and they can.
They're specialists. That's all they
yes.
deal with.
It's the electricity part of your heart, and then your cardiologists and the angioplasties and the cardiac cath and that's dealing with the plumbing part of your heart, where you have clogs, and where you have a clog at, like in your sink, it stops the blood flow to the area where the clog is. So that part of the heart is not getting oxygen, and it'll die eventually. Or that's when you have a heart attack. If it's in your heart, if it's in your brain, it's a stroke. But that's all the plumbing of the body. And that cardiac, that sac that pericardia sac around the heart, that it can get infected. It can be real nasty.
Mhm.
You need that for the pumping part of it, but it can cause a lot of havoc.
Sometimes antibiotics work. Sometimes they actually have to go on and withdraw fluid from around the heart or in that sac, because it gets so large that it presses on the heart and can stop the heart from beating.
You want your heart to beat.
Now, all of us are going
It's
to die.
important.
All of us going to die from cardiac arrest, right?
Absolutely.
Eventually,
Yes.
yeah,
When the heart stops, we're dead.
it's over.
Mhm.
It's over.
I love it's like they put that on there when there's, of course you died of cardiac arrest. We all arrest at death, right? But there could be, that's not necessarily a cause. That's kind of the outcome is cardiac arrest.
So obviously the importance of the heart is this pumping blood
And
throughout.
keeping it healthy. When you have high blood pressure, it makes the heart work harder. So then, like a muscle, the heart is a muscle, and when a muscle works harder, it gets bigger. And when the heart gets bigger, it becomes less effective as a pump.
Gets flabby, doesn't work as well.
So you don't want to stress your heart out with hypertension, because it takes a lot to push that blood at the speed that it is going when it's. I usually bring tubing with me when I'm talking about the heart because I show a small tubing, and when you're having hypertension, your blood vessels are not open as wide as they should be. They're constricted. We say they're constricted. So I showed a small tubing, then I showed this big tubing. And so when you take a lot of your heart medication, it dilates the blood vessels or open them up wider so that the blood can go through. Uh, you know, when you going through something smaller, it's more forceful. It has to be more forceful to get through there. And and then I used the analogy of like a Russian um, river banks. You see how the water goes so fast, and then it chips off the banks of the river.
The rocks and
Yeah, and all
debris.
that. And that's what happens in your blood vessels when the blood is going so fast through that. It chips off the different vessels, the
Mhm.
blood vessels.
The cholesterol, if it's lined up, which can break loose and then go and cause a stroke.
Can I
or heart-
just kind of, just as an aside, be a little parenthetical here? Is is there a benefit for cholesterol? And what is that benefit? Because we hear a lot about cholesterol. You know, we have a bad cholesterol or good cholesterol. So, in terms of body function, what role does cholesterol play in that body
It
function?
insulates you. It'll insulate. It keeps um, certain organs in place. It has a function.
And the good cholesterol also helps take away that bad cholesterol, kind of piggybacks on it, helps take it away to get rid of it. That's why you want your good cholesterol, your HDL, to be higher. The higher the number, the better. Whereas all your other cholesterols, the lower the number, the better. But with HDL, the higher the better. So that is what comes along and helps rid your body of the bad cholesterol.
The good Lord created us, and we need everything. But we can live without something,
Mhm.
and there's always a balance in check.
We're inside Be Healthy, Be You. Miss Julia Means, Miss Brenda Buchanan of Ascension, Wisconsin. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. right, welcome back. We're inside Be Healthy, Be You. Miss Julia Means, Miss Brenda Buchanan, in Central Wisconsin, and February is Heart Month, and so we're having a discussion around the heart. One of the things what about people who you start talking about this with bodybuilders? Those folks who are on steroids, and the impact that it had. You know, like, is it something with the mass around your heart? Am I?
I don't remember.
That the steroids destroy?
No, I'm
Oh.
saying the muscles, how you can have like in your chest, you're building up, and so you have all this mass. It's putting pressure on the heart.
Yeah, I mean, you do have the rib cage there providing some, protection around any of these organs in here. That's what the rib cage does, is provide some protection. But steroids in general just do damage to the blood vessels. And so kidneys, I mean, any of your blood vessels, it does damage to them and puts you at risk for all kinds of things, kidney failure, liver failure, high blood pressure, high irregular heart rates, all that kind of stuff.
So we talk about this whole vascular thing. What's the impact then? And just only doing it as it relates to this very broad conversation. What about people who are dealing with sickle cell?
Sickle cell is
blood vessels are fine, but
it's a bad. It's bad.
It's bad.
Yeah, children can have heart attacks and strokes, and it is just because the cell is not the blood vessel; it's the cell, the blood cell. Instead, blood cells are round, and they're shaped in a specific way,
like little donuts.
Yeah, they got holes in them, so they can go through the blood vessels. But when it sickles, it is sickling. It looks like a sickle. And then it can get caught in certain, usually where joints are, it can get caught in certain blood vessels.
And they clump up.
And that's the pain. And
could that happen to your heart?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, most definitely. Those blood vessels going to the heart can be clogged, just like, with other things. But yeah, it's a painful disease. And so many people just treat people with sickle cell terribly. They don't believe the pain, or they ignore the pain. They're just drug seeking. I think we've gotten better over the years at identifying that, but it's always the first thing is, they're in here looking for drugs when they're in incredible pain. And sometimes they don't even look for that.
Yeah, it took a Black nurse to come up with a protocol on how to treat a sickle cell patient in ER, because a lot of them present in ER, and working with families. I can't think of her name right now, but she was a dynamite woman, and she worked out at Children's Hospital for.
I remember her.
And she was just awesome. I heard her speak, and she was a fighter for sickle cell patients, and now we have to keep that in mind,
because she developed the clinic at Children's for kids in sickle cell. Made a huge difference in their lives.
She did. And we were told that a lot of when the children have sickle cell, and their parents bring them to the doctor, they do well. But when they become adults, they don't connect to a hematologist and go in like they should. And so they don't fare as well when they become adults as they did when they were children. And we were looking at, is it because it's so far away and, it's so hard to get there, or what? But yeah, although we've made a lot of strides with sickle cell, and they're even doing transplant, bone marrow, and one young lady, because we gave a dinner at Ebenezer for sickle cell patients, and that nurse was there.
Yeah, she was.
And of course, the first one was a dad who gave it to his daughter, and
the guilt
that was so touching to me. He said, they asked me if I would do it for my daughter. Of course I would do it. and she was sickle
It
cell
was
free.
yeah, it was amazing. I mean, because even 20 years ago, we wouldn't have even thought that. And I grew up with some family members that had sickle cell and that were my age.
Mhm.
And then I had a cousin who she was in her 20s when she died, and she was my son's age. But we've come a long way.
Come a long way.
Before it was you definitely more than likely weren't going to make it past 20, 25 years old. Now we see people living with it.
It's a Black History Month, so let's do a Black History factoid as it
Oh
relates
boy.
to. We're talking about heart disease, but obviously blood
Blood
kind of
all goes
go
together.
together. The Black Panther Party was a health activist group that screened for sickle cell anemia. Now, this was done back in the 60s,
Mhm.
a genetic disease that affects people of African descent. The Black Panther Party's efforts including screening, education, and advocacy to expose racial biases in the medical system and to improve access to health care. I did not know this. In 1972, the Black Panther Party's advocacy led former President Richard Nixon signing legislation to fund sickle cell centers nationwide in 1972. Well, Dick Nixon never got a lot of credit for some of the stuff he did. I think ADA happened under him. I want to be sure. So we talk about that, and here's something else that could impact your heart health if you're a person who's dealing with sickle cell anemia.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I have the trait, and when I got married, you had to do blood tests. Yeah, and they would tell you if you had the trait, but
Wasn't that also, as I say, wasn't it also to make sure
you're not related.
Marrying your
related
cousin.
and venereal disease?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was one of the big
Yeah,
ones was venereal disease.
Yeah, you had to get the. I don't know if they do blood tests
I
now.
don't think they do.
No, they don't do that anymore. But I had to do it.
That could be a problem because what if we had kids? My first cousin. Uh-oh, that's a problem.
Matter of fact, not trying to change the subject, but I don't know. Have you ever seen that YouTube? What's that gentleman's name? What's that? I can't remember that company that did that show on. There was many episodes of working with that family in Virginia, who their siblings are brother and sister. And then the physical, I mean, just not physical, but cognitive. This whole family is just like one. He only communicates by barking. They're physically severely deformed, most of them.
Hemophilia, right?
Mhm.
Hemophilia came.
The Whitakers or something like that. They were talking about it Sunday.
Yeah, but it is a fascinating show. He wasn't really trying to take advantage of them, but it's just hard to believe. I mean, they live in this awful kind of place, but
I was listening to my guy Joyner. I can't think of his first name now. Tom Joyner. And someone called in. Was it Tom Joyner? I think it was Tom Joyner. Someone called in. And I think I talked about no, Michelle, my assistant, shared this story with me back in the day. There was a young lady who she got pregnant, had the child, never told the dad that he was the father. Once she just went on. They're at a family reunion.
No.
And the dad had met his daughter, didn't know that was his daughter, and they
had a baby.
They didn't.
Oh.
They didn't. And so the whole question became once you realized that was your daughter, should you end the relationship? And as the story goes, the daughter didn't want to end the relationship. She in love, which is really crazy, right? Because how all of that. But that could have been very disastrous if they had children.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had a couple here, brother and sister, here in Wisconsin, where they had lived together. I don't know how you legally get married, because I don't think you can legally marry your sibling, but there are practical reasons why brothers and sisters don't have children together, why even first cousins don't have children together, because of the disastrous birth effects that you're going to have based on that, which is.
And and you've heard about people who didn't know they were brother and sister and who've gotten together and then years later find out and how horrified they are that they're married to their sibling, and then have to decide what to do. And for most of the ones I've read, they have parted ways. But that's why all these secrets we keep in are not good.
And
We
that's
always
randomness of nature, because here you had no clue, right? And it's bam, it happened. But among royalty in Europe, they tended to do
I was
that.
gonna say that they did, because they wanted to keep it all in the family.
Keep it
Right.
all, keep it in the bloodline. And then what you did was you really contaminated your bloodline in ways that you didn't even realize. When you think about the British monarchy, well, they're related to the Germans, right? And so cousins were marrying cousins, and that could be, that's the problem that people have with Adam and Eve, because then they say, well, who are your kids?
Right. Who did they marry?
Who did they marry? And so maybe that's why we shouldn't take that story so literally, because if you march it through its logical conclusions, you would create a mongrel race of people.
Well, and even
I asked my pastor that. He ain't answered it yet.
he didn't answer. Even quite a few families in the Bible would say, I don't want you marrying those non-Jewish people. Go back to our family and get you a wife. So
yeah, I mean, it was, well, and many cultures is always perpetuation of the bloodline, the culture. And so there were people who did not marry outside of their
culture,
or their ethnic group, because you're trying to maintain a certain level of purity. I mean, that word Gentile means dog. That we don't intermix with other folks. And
now, ironically, Keith, this is what I was speaking to when you and Brenda and Julia were talking Sunday morning. Pastor Powell's here was the subject, okay, of his lesson. What's the problem with kissing cousins? Yeah. So I mean, it went on to talk about this family, the Whitakers out of West Virginia, and how they basically only dealt with one another. So that's what I was alluding to. I don't know. And isn't that supposed to be like not good for your health?
Well, that's the primary answer.
Yeah. Well, it causes physical and
Yeah, I
cognitive
mean,
disorders. I mean, like in this one particular family, and maybe I'll show you at break. I mean, their physical abnormalities are severe.
Really?
And cognitively, many of them are too. But and they're brother and sister. But it's like even when we're breeding animals, people who breed cats and dogs and sell them, you don't breed bloodlines together. So if you have a family of pets in there, you've kept the mother and you've kept one of the sons, you make sure that they're not able to mate together, because then those dogs tend to have physical deformities, behavioral issues, all of that. So when you're looking for a breeder, you usually bring in an outside dog, a male dog, to impregnate the female because of the risk of severe abnormalities.
And I think that obviously when certainly the Old and the New Testament is written, we do not have the scientific knowledge that we have today. It was the science of the time. And so now we clearly understand now that there are, and it was, if we're talking about maybe 14th, 15th century, it was still happening in Europe. And you all know the science sometimes is observational. Right. I mean,
lot.
Well, at least that's where it starts for sure.
Right. That's something that you saw and you go, oh, this happened. And then we become empirical, where now we'll go in and be more exhausting in what we use to do the research. But the kind of understanding. So that's why I tell people, don't be literal. take it in context, the metaphor of what it is. But if you try to explain it scientifically, you're not going to be able to.
Mhm.
And then there are risks for that. In terms of, you hear people talking about chronic heart disease. One, is that hereditary?
There could be some genetic component to it, but also usually it's again a lifestyle issue. Like if you have diabetes, you're probably going to have chronic heart disease if it's unmanaged. A lot of that comes from chronic. Just means long term, greater than 3 months. Health issue that goes on, but a lot of it is what we've done to our unknowingly, most of the time, what we've done to our heart and blood vessels over the years.
So there may or may not be a genetic linkage.
Correct.
It and I'm going to speak on the part that it is a genetic linkage to some families, and it's really sad because some men in certain families die young because their blood vessels, women blood vessels are a different size than men blood vessels.
Is that because of pregnancy?
No, it's just because of our genetic makeup. But some men genetically have smaller vessels than an average man, and that means that they get clogged quicker, and so they have more heart disease, and they have it young, because you have some families that the men don't live past
40.
Yeah, they have heart attacks so young, and it's a genetic component to that family.
How much of it then? But I think Brenda was saying some of it is also environmental,
right? It's
our
both.
Diets.
Yeah, it can be both. A good example is, like I said, uncontrolled diabetes, hypertension causes your heart to, damages your blood vessels, but also makes your heart, like Julia said, work harder, so it gets bigger. It's not as it doesn't work as effectively. The blood vessels get hardened. You've got the cholesterol. All of those are related to heart disease. Those are mostly lifestyle factors, although cholesterol can be a genetic thing. But a friend of mine I know, his dad died at 40 of a massive heart attack. When he was about 38, he started having some health issues, and most of the time, people back then, we didn't even seem to think that, I should tell them that my dad died of a heart attack at age 40. But this particular doctor was pretty astute, because he was, his energy level, everything had went down. Well, they did some more testing and found it out that, he was definitely in need of a heart transplant. And that if they had not intervened, he would have probably at 40 died the same way as dad did, because that was all genetic. Like Julia said, narrow arteries. When those blood vessels are narrow, the heart is working harder to pump everything through, and so it just gets inefficient and gets flabby, and it's no longer functional. So, but we do play a lot. Even if we're not genetically predisposed, we can still develop heart disease by the way we eat, lack of exercise, being overweight, unmanaged chronic health conditions.
What about
and I think that's genetic too, because if you weren't trained to go and have a primary care physician and go to the doctor and take your medicine and eat right, and if you came from a household that didn't do that, all that's foreign to you. And so you don't know what you don't know, and then by the time you start exhibiting symptoms, it may be too late.
Right. There's already damage. And we see that, I'll be honest with you, more with men than we do women, because women of childbearing age, they're seeing their gynecologist. Although I have to say, many of them don't have a primary doctor, which we have to really help them to understand the need to have a primary doctor. But, they're going in, getting their annual exams because they need to for a variety of reasons. They're having children. But when men turn 18, unless they've been told you should go get a physical every year, they're kind of like, well, they don't go unless they're ill. And then they still have to be pretty ill before they go, and studies show men go to doctors because a mother, a sister, a significant other brings them in and says it's time that you see somebody, because they're just not used to that. They don't build relationships with doctors the same way, because they don't. But if you grew up, like I was always on my son, and he still, he was very ill, not something that he had control over. But, you have to have those relationships in place, because so many things can be picked up way before they're problematic. Even, we tell our pregnant girls, they're like, I don't know why I have to go in every month. All they do is take my blood pressure and make me pee in a cup. We can get a ton of information from doing your heart rate, your blood pressure, and peeing in a cup. We get a lot of information from that.
You think it's just because people are just maybe put back by the science involved with it?
Science, way they're treated, a lot of different things. It's not one thing. It's a lot of different things. And that's
financial.
Why mm-hmm.
But that was the other thing I was saying, that until recently, many people depended on faith because they didn't have access to healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
And so you had, and I think that's why you saw, when you look at some of the people who used to do the tent revivals, and look at the economic demographic of those folks. Chances are they're usually poor,
mm-hmm.
right? Which means that they may or may not have access to healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
We saw it in COVID, where people were very dismissive of the science until it was too late,
mm-hmm.
right? I mean, you had people out saying, "Oh, I'll depend on my faith." Well, depend on your faith and go to the doctor,
mm-hmm.
and encouraging people. And look, I know it's scary when you go in for your annual, because you don't know what they're gonna find, and when you go in. But if you let it accelerate to a point now where you just need radical treatment, we've gotten better in terms of heart health, right? In terms of what medically we can do.
Oh
man, yeah.
Cholesterol medication was a game changer.
Yeah.
I remember when I was working in the hospital, this resident was talking about how cholesterol drugs was going to change the face of cardiology, and it really has. Because and Brenda was speaking off air about how people don't think they need their cholesterol medication. And they have a whole. Do you do?
No, I stopped
Keith
taking
was
it,
raising his hand,
and I went in, and my doctor said, "You're not taking your cholesterol medication." Why you say that, doc? I'm just looking at the numbers right here, So
yeah, and thank God you can take it. Some people are allergic to it,
mm-hmm.
and now I see on television they got a new drug that if you can't take statin, you can
mm-hmm.
take this other drug. Because I lost a dear friend because he couldn't take statins. He had a heart attack. But statins decrease that cholesterol. It works. But they do. Some people were used to just taking 10 or 20 milligrams, and now they put you up to 40.
Mm-hmm.
They put you up to 40 automatically, whether you
mm-hmm.
they go by this formula. If you're a certain age, if you have a certain chronic disease, they just gonna put you up
family
to 40.
history. If you've had a family history of younger people having strokes and heart attacks,
they ain't playing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's I encourage people to talk to their doctors, because we brought this up because a friend of mine was saying her doctor was over medicating her because she's on these cholesterol meds and her cholesterol has always been normal. But depending on your health history and your current health, your family's history, we want your cholesterol way lower than what normal is. And so you may look at it and say, well, it's in a normal range, but because you're so high risk for some of these adverse heart events, that they want to keep your cholesterol much lower than what is considered normal.
Mm-hmm. And then when we talk about the electric part of the heart, when you have the irregular heart rate, like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was talking about, he had atrial fib, and he knew he had it because he couldn't walk through the airport. And that's when your heart is doing like a cha-cha-cha. I always say skips a beat.
Or too many beats or too fast.
Yeah. If it's rapid atrial fib, you're usually going to pass out anyway.
Yeah.
But
And then Arthur Ashe
he
had
had-
heart disease.
he did.
Yeah, I mean, and he was in great shape.
But that electricity, that electrical part, you can be in great shape and still have
Mhm.
electrical dysfunction going on. They can fix it. They have medication for it, but you got to get there because when the heart is doing those irregular beats, it can throw off. It can create clots and throw them off faster, and you can have a stroke, heart attack,
Mhm.
wherever that clot lands. It stops the blood flow.
At one point, it was that men were more likely to die of a heart attack than women. Those numbers seem to be, I'm just pulling up a couple of things here where it says, like addressing the global burden of cardiovascular disease in women. It obviously, and that's probably because what women are doing, the level of stress.
Stress and hormones, especially as we age, the changes in hormones, a lot of that, the estrogen was very protective of our heart and our blood vessels. And as we lose that, as we get older, we lose that protective mechanism too. So, and then stress is a killer on the heart. There's no doubt about that.
And I think men now are more educated because back in the day, when you look at those old movies, they were eating all those steaks and
Mhm.
they eating all that beef, all that high cholesterol,
And a
food,
cigarette.
and the
Yeah,
cigarette,
right.
and,
So,
and stuff, and
fill
so,
it up with fat, the
Yeah.
artery with fat, and then close it down with
Yeah.
that
So
cigarette.
Guys
I,
visit the doctor's office, the doctor's smoking a cigarette, he's smoking
Yeah.
a cigarette. Because you used to be, well, before we bar, but people used to smoke in hospitals, right?
Oh yeah, you used to be able to smoke in the nurse's station.
I
And then in
always
break
thought
rooms.
that was
Mhm.
horrible.
Right.
But yeah.
Really?
did.
Well, you're not a smoker.
Well, I have smoked. I was cool.
Might that be cool?
I did like them
Oh, they're
cools.
like those cools, not like a menthol cigarette. It started with Salem's.
Yeah, my mother was a Salem
Was she?
girl.
Yeah, they
Mhm.
smoked Salem's, and then we went to Cools, and then the game changer, Newport.
Oh yeah.
Newport became the game changer, boy.
Listen, I tried the Marlboro one time, and that was the worst taste I've ever had in my mouth.
Man, sometimes, and this, boy, tell you about how old I am, but used to have cigarette machines,
Oh yeah.
and depending on the bar you went to,
Pull out.
Yeah.
They'll give you a wrong cigarette.
no, and I'll tell a quick story. I know we're going to break. Go to Victor's. Well, at that point, Victor's the cigarette machine wasn't catering to black folks, so you get Winston's.
Oh,
Mm.
But if you get drunk enough,
That Winston was
that
okay.
Winston was okay. Nothing like nicotine and alcohol. You're listening to Community Voice. Hey, the phone line's open too. If you have any questions, 414-444-5250. 414-444-5250. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Community Voice, and we're inside Be Healthy, Be You. Miss Julie Means, Miss Brenda Buchanan. We're just pulling up. It says that 35% of all deaths in women is cardiovascular disease.
Mm-hmm. You can take all the cancers, the top 3 cancers, add them together, and more people still die of heart disease than those 3 combined.
So, we talked about the probably the genetic linkage. What's some of the preventative things we can do, or what some of the things we can do to support good heart health?
Diet, exercise, and taking your medication, and learning how to reduce your stress or handle
definitely
your stress.
Mm-hmm. People in the Mediterranean do not have nearly the risks of heart disease that we do, and that's because of the diet, mostly that
Less
they eat.
fat in their diet.
Less fat, a lot of lean proteins, whole grains, vegetables.
Olive oil.
Yes, olive oils.
Which is ridiculously priced right now.
It is.
It's like $20.
Wait, it's going to be a lot more than that.
It's going to be a lot more because they're part of the EU.
Uh-huh.
And if they do tariffs, that's going to impact. We do a lot of cooking with olive oil.
Mm-hmm.
So in some ways that's been better, but every now and then you really want.
Mm-hmm. Well, and olive oil has a lower set point, so it doesn't if you get it too hot, it's going to burn. It's going to start to burn. Mm-hmm. Whereas your vegetable oils, of course, and things like that, you can burn at a higher temperature.
Yeah.
So deep frying some chicken.
Like peanut oil is another one where you can't, it gets real hot.
Mm-hmm.
But it's sesame seed oil is another good one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know too much about the oils, but I know lard don't work.
No, but lard sure makes a good pie and some good fried chicken. I tell you that.
We don't know how much lard we eating if we eating a pie.
Oh yes, if you're eating stuff like if it's got a nice flaky crust, probably got some lard in it.
Well, there are people who just said that we shouldn't be eating any animals,
animals and animal oils and
or any of that. Mm-hmm. You all clued me a long time ago. There's no real medicinal benefit from eating liver.
Well, it's high in iron.
And but you get iron from it.
Right. Yeah, I ain't eat nobody's liver. Eat liver? Yes.
It's high in cholesterol because it produces cholesterol. So even in that animal you eating it from, it's they said all organ meats.
They say don't eat any organ meats.
So what about cod liver oil?
Well, cod liver oil is from the fish, obviously, so it's high in those omega fatty acids, which are actually good for you. Yeah.
Help the fish. Remember they used to give all those fish oil pills out for a while there. They don't do that
They don't.
anymore.
Some people still do, but a lot of people still do, but they don't push it like they used to. But I'll tell you, I had to have that tablespoon in my mouth of cod liver oil every morning, probably starting about October. Ugh.
Yeah, because that cod liver oil would keep you from getting sick. Because I remember taking it going to school.
Maybe.
Well,
maybe
Mom maybe it was in our head. Yeah, maybe it was in our head. But
and again, I think that's if you don't think the importance of having health insurance, because we had to do a whole lot of stuff to be creative. In response to an illness, because we may or may not have access to a doctor.
Hats off to Milwaukee Public Health Department. Back in the day, even when they used to have those vans that would come around and do immunizations, and we had health departments like in different parts of the city. Every neighborhood had their own health department, and in that health department there was a doctor and there was nurses there, and you could do well baby checks, and they did a lot of health education and health promotion.
Well, that's the socialism. The socialism was that there's a benefit from a healthy population. Nurses would come out and visit a child up until age 5.
They did. They would knock on your door and come on in and sit down.
Yeah. And even in the schools, they were in the schools all the time.
They were in the schools. They did vision. check for lice. Remember?
Yes, every week you'd be sitting there, they'd be parting your hair, look at everybody's head for lice.
And black people, we don't get lice
Yeah,
because they can't live in our oil.
Well, and the hair is kinky. It's harder for them to go. You can get it, but it's not as likely.
yeah. I do remember though getting ringworm,
Yeah.
Well, that's something.
And that's
we
a
got.
fungus,
Yeah,
you know.
we got
So
that.
and I got it not my scalp because it always talk about there's a
Where'd you
comedian.
get it?
My
yeah, you
face.
can get it. That's a very common place because kids touch each other. They touch it and touch each other. Face is very common.
And we always knew who had ringworm because they had the stocking caps on.
Yeah, that was so. Talking about walk of shame. That was, we did some horrible things to people. Had the special needs kids in the basement.
Yeah, in the basement and on the little bus with helmets. Yeah, that was
Special
rough.
C. That was before
wrong.
helmets.
No,
that was
yes.
before helmets.
But the crazy thing, they would
That
have
was
on the
terrible.
school bus. I remember special ed would be special ed on the school bus when they pulled up. At
Right.
our
Well, that's
school.
why as kids
But
got
you went to
older,
Greenfield
nobody
School,
Yeah, I went to
nobody
Greenfield.
wanted to ride the short bus.
Yeah, nobody
Short
was.
bus.
So
because it
we
was-
lived
yeah.
on the northwest side of
Yeah.
Milwaukee, and so my son went to Golda Meir, and he had to catch a bus there. And when that little bus pulled up, he was just devastated because there was,
Here
there
comes
was
the
only
special bus.
there was only 6 kids that rode that
Yeah.
bus because they had to take them all the way down to Golda Meir. But he was not feeling that little bus when it pulled.
When I was at Victor Berger, which now is Martin Luther King Elementary School, that neighborhood was so crowded, and so literally they had to bus students to other schools. So the two
Mhm.
schools they went to McKinley and then Cass.
Mm-hmm.
So you see the long yellow buses, but then the kids who were in special C, that little yellow bus.
That was terrible. We were just terrible.
Just stigmatized, it's just
Yeah.
like, oh man, I always tell the story, Mrs. Beeman, my 3rd grade teacher, I was going through whatever I was going through, and Miss Beeman was really frustrated with me. And she said, Keith Parris, when they call you by your whole name, you're in trouble.
Mhm.
She go, Keith Parris, I'm putting you in special C.
Uh-oh.
Well, I didn't realize this. You just can't put a kid in special C. You got to bring the parent in.
Mhm.
And she brought my mama in, talking
Uh-oh.
about putting me in special
I
C.
bet your mama didn't go for that.
Oh, my mama go, ain't nothing wrong with that boy. And then I thought about it later in life, when the children of the Hebrew people were at the Red Sea.
Mhm.
And so, you got the Red Sea in front of you, you got the approaching Egyptian army behind you, the Lord said, stand still, you see the salvation of the Lord, stop talking, keep moving. And then he said, and these Egyptians that you see,
Mhm.
you will see no more.
Mhm.
My mama said, that behavior that you see,
You won't see
you will see no more.
Keith, I'm a living witness. I'm not lying. I'm a living witness to that statement.
He said that you will never see it again. And she's right.
Yeah.
She's right. Miss Beeman never saw it again. Now, I ain't gonna tell you why Miss Beeman didn't see it again. All I know.
Statute of limitation. Is
Oh yeah. I
So
love
it
it.
was an oppositional defiance disorder, huh? Somehow you managed to control it.
Well, you brought back memory with that
Oh
one.
man! And I remember reading that. I said, "Boy, that takes me back to my childhood." He said, "Oh yeah, because these Egyptians,
Yeah, you won't
this behavior you will never see again."
Doc,
She
that
got to come up to school.
that happened to me.
They get ready to put me in a special class.
Uh-huh.
Now she always called me her special son, but not like that.
Boy.
Ain't nothing wrong with that boy. Now some people are in denial about their children's behavior. My mama was spot on.
Yeah.
Because I remember later on in life, my mom got frustrated with me, and I'm grown. We having a conversation. My mama, so I'm college educated. I'm going back and forth. Now my mom was frustrated with me now because she's not winning the factual arguments. My mama go, you know what? I should have put your behind in special school. And
Well,
then
I
she
had to
said, wait a
check.
minute. She said that you can take that any way you want.
Killed you right there. Like, what do you mean?
So I'm going like, is that a compliment or a diagnosis?
Like she playing with your mind.
It's like,
Playing with
at
your
first I'm
mind.
going like, I'm special. Then she go, well, no, wait a minute. Hold
Yeah,
on.
wait a minute. I don't think that's what she meant.
I don't think she meant that. That's how frustrated she got with her special one. Or as they call me, that one over there. When your mama referred to you in the fourth voice, Oh yeah,
You was terrible. That one over there.
my sister get frustrated. She, I can't believe we had the same mama. But no,
She's pretty smart too.
oh man, that was the thing. And again, in Black History Month, when I sit up and I think about this, yesterday we were talking about Mildred Harpo
Mm-hmm.
and how she did freedom schools back in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And my mama didn't send us to freedom school. And look, my mama was blacker than black. But the one thing my mama thought was paramount was education.
Mm-hmm.
And there would be no interruptions of your education. I think in retrospect now she'll look at it and go, I understand the protest. They were protesting what was going on in MPS at the time, but we weren't part of no protest. You better have your little butt over at school. I mean, that was just the importance of learning and education for my mom, because my mom ended up deferring her education. I think my mom wanted to be a teacher, and she got married, had me, so she deferred. And for all of us during Black History Month, think about the legacy that people had, but the sacrifices that they made, where they deferred their dreams in order for you to realize yours.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm always appreciative of that, to be just around that. And just talking about, my mom had been diagnosed as pre-diabetic, and she just happened, because my mom was a salesman. I never had that gift. Salespeople have to be able to hear no. I could never hear no. To me, that's rejection. I get sensitive, the whole thing. And my mama just happened to be selling Bibles
Mm-hmm.
for the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Mm-hmm.
But they also sold books on diet.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you really look at Seventh-day Adventists and what they do in terms of their diet,
They don't eat meat, right?
but they eat meat. They follow the Jewish dietary code. They don't eat pork. They don't do seafood. I don't know if they're as extreme as Jewish folks, where you can't get a cheeseburger because you're not allowed to mix a dairy with meat. So if you go into, talk about trivia. If you go into a kosher style Jewish restaurant, that's not kosher. You can get a cheeseburger in a kosher style. You cannot get a cheeseburger in a kosher restaurant, because they just don't mix, right? And what makes it kosher is that it has that beef or whatever has been blessed by a rabbi, certified as clean.
Mm-hmm.
I think in Islam is halal, which is allowable. Same thing. How that cow is raised, it's really amazing.
I'll say it's about the preparation of the meat
Preparation
too,
of the
right?
meat,
And how
right.
it was killed and
The
all
whole
of
thing.
that.
So what is allowable, unfortunately for descendants of enslaved Africans, the Scott Irish in the South, the Anglo-Saxons in the South, because of poverty, we ended up eating things that maybe we shouldn't eat. And boy, because I want a pork
what
chop.
nobody else, what they didn't want, what was left over.
What was left over, because this would pork. And then the amazing thing about human beings is we're always adapting to survive in our environment.
Mm-hmm.
I always wonder who was the first person to figure, like, if you put meat and cook it, that it could taste good. Who
I thought about that too.
Yeah, I mean, that somebody at some point came up with, I could make a hamburger, because probably prior to that, Homo sapiens were probably vegetarian. And I don't know how we then evolved to being carnivores.
Probably just survival, pure survival, probably.
Right. So I think if you found yourself in a place where there was not a lot of vegetation, you got to eat. And, observationally, you're noticing that the lion is going after the gazelle.
You're like, let me go after something a little smaller here. Let me get that rabbit.
Or be able to, because yesterday I was reading Carter G. Woodson, and he talked about the domestication of certain animals. Goats, cows was domesticated in Africa, which I did not know in terms of where we are. So, boy, this is kind of wide ranging. We started off about heart disease, and it is Black History Month. Again, Before the Mayflower by Lerone Bennett Jr. The first publishing of this book was done in 1961. A 12-year-old at Francis Parkman Junior High School named Keith Parris read this book, changed
How
my
long did it
life.
take you to read that? Of course, you 12 years old.
I'm
You
12
ain't got
years
nothing
old.
else to do.
I ain't got nothing. Didn't have much of a life. And I just, I just enjoy reading. And then, of course, Michael Harriot, Black AF history. You can do
That's marvelous,
insertion of what that is. But if you ever seen, which I think is just a great, I love it. I go back and watch Black as a with Kenya Barris in the family. Oh my God, to talk about, and that's the guy who did Blackish.
Blackish,
And
That was funny.
huh? Blackish.
That was a good.
Yeah, black people get money, and how you trying to keep it real, and then how do you raise your kids because now you got money.
Mhm.
Now some of the stuff we did, we just had to do because we was poor. Now the question becomes, what do you do now that you have means? No pun. That now that you have the means to do what you want to do, and then people go, well, maybe they should have come up like me. I don't know. I mean, well, no, because it came up like me because we had to come up like me. It wasn't like we had a whole lot of alternatives. And what we did growing up poor, it could be. You may, and even our healthcare, stuff that we did. I remember this kid knocked me on a piece of glass on the playground. God, MPS. We didn't have grass; we had concrete. Yeah, so man, it was bad. And back in the day, the ambulances were done by Milwaukee police. And people remember they were white, pull up. So I'm at Fifth Street School.
Fifth Street.
Just bleeding. And I'm sitting in when you get in the office and you're not in trouble, all the good stuff you get, and they're reading the books and the whole thing. And now the ambulance pulls up. I'm getting a ride in the ambulance. Had my nice little ride down to the emergency room.
On Wisconsin Avenue. 19th and Wisconsin
There
Avenue.
you go down there. And so I'm sitting there and they're getting, but they have to call my mom because they're going to have to do stitches. Well, of course, I had an accident in school. So I'll never forget, I'm sitting outside the room. My mother, small, but my mother walked fast. And when I saw my mother turn that corner, doing her paces, I just busted out crying. Oh, I'm just crying. And the medical people said, well, why are you crying? I said, because she going to whoop me. Because she had to get off work early.
Catch that bus.
Now, great. The bus she normally catch was on the route. But now she got to catch the bus. I don't even know if she got my bus fare to get me home. I don't know if that was in the budget. And man, oh man. So like anytime we got hurt, you didn't cough around my mama. Because if we start coughing, you know where she going, right?
To that medicine cabinet.
And what's in the medicine cabinet?
Cod liver oil.
Even worse than that. Castor.
Castor oil.
Now we would start off with Father John.
Funny how we thought that took it all out, right?
It took it out.
It
took it out.
You was just too sick to know it took it out.
Oh, when you on that toilet, it's coming out. Oh man.
Maybe, yeah.
But yeah, she put you. I don't know where that was. Somebody thought that was a great idea where you would do castor oil. It's Heart Month. Some of the things we're doing, I know that they're doing a health challenge at Zion Hill, encouraging people to get out, do some walking, just do some start, right? Certainly when you take a look at your diet and, we're a month removed. Someone was talking about quit day. Now all those people who well-intentioned at the beginning of January, I'm going to get in shape, and found out it was a little bit harder than they thought it was. And so now they quit. But there's little incremental things we can do probably to have a great heart benefit, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like you said, walking, maybe just increasing your, vegetables, fruit, increasing some more protein, non-meat proteins into your diet, beans, things like that.
Let me do this. There's going to be a community conversation with Dr. Jeffrey Wright. He's candidate for the Wisconsin State Superintendent of Education. That will be this evening at the Village Library, starting at 6, from 6 to 8. You can come, and if you have any questions, the other two candidates decided that they would wait until after the primary. Hopefully they'll make it in the primary, depending on who it is. So again, if you have questions, you can meet Dr. Wright this evening at the Village Square Library, 5190 North 35th Street, starting at 6 p.m. This is a very important office, the education, and not knowing what's going to happen with the federal office of education and whether or not what that means. So superintendents of schools are very important. Milwaukee could, depending on who the superintendent could be, there could be a takeover. So all these things. So it's really important for you to get out and have a conversation with Dr. Wright. I'll do this. I'll deal with this tomorrow. Julia, thank you.
You're welcome.
Brenda, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, good Lord willing, creek don't rise. Hope to talk to everybody tomorrow. Excuse me. And as always, go from this place in peace.
Open up.